So welcome to Simply Happy Conversations. Today I have with me Mezzino, and she is a declutter coach, and she helps people simplify their lives and be more intentional with their own belongings. And she also has her own podcast, Be Uncluttered, with Tara Tuttle. So welcome, Beck.
Hi.
It's so lovely to have you. Finally organise a session so we can catch up.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's taken us all year, but that's all right. It would be worth it. It's worth the wait because you have so much information to share and so much years of experience. So 15 years you've been a declutter coach now.
Yeah, nearly 16 at the end of this year, which just blows me away.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So to start with then, telling us a little bit about yourself, things that you like to do in your free time.
Oh, well, I am a fair weather exerciser, which means it has to be like between 18 and 21 degrees, or maybe even only like 19 and 20 degrees for me to exercise outside, because I either overheat or I'm too cold and I get asthma. So I love indoor rock climbing. So that's my exercise thing, because the weather is pretty standard inside the building, so it doesn't like rain on me or get cold or anything like that. So I'm like, I can do that kind of exercise. So I climb, and I think I am obsessed with language learning as well. So that's another thing I do in my spare time, which again is a little bit obsessive. So I'm learning Indonesian and Italian. And I can speak Indonesian now fairly well, and Italian is like right at the start of Italian. So that one's definitely a work in progress. The Indonesian I can get by, which is good. But so there's that. And I'm sure that once I get bored with Italian, I'll probably move on to another language.
That's amazing. I bet you can't wait to get back over there then.
Oh, I cannot wait. Yeah, I can't wait to. It just like this. I mean, I'd say the second that Bali opens, we're like, yeah, but it might take a little bit longer than that. I think Australia might take a while to let us out, but yeah, as soon as it's practical and possible and all of that kind of stuff, back over there for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful. So because the weather where you are in Adelaide, is it around that consistent temperature, or it's quite a little bit hotter? You're probably more suited to Melbourne, to live in Melbourne then, isn't it?
No, see, I love the heat. I just can't exercise in it because I have anhydrosis, so I don't sweat. So I'm actually I hate being cold, so I'm actually much happier. I'm really much happier in summer, and I don't mind an Adelaide summer at all. I do prefer the humidity, so Bali is definitely preferable. But as long as I'm not exercising in it, I'm fine. But it's just the anhydrosis that causes that problem.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So then maybe talk about the business, how you started and how it's changed and progressed over the years as well.
It has really evolved.
Yeah,
it has really evolved. So I started back in 2005. I decided I wanted to do this as a business, and I was working as a business analyst in a credit union and doing like a completely different job, working in IT, and it was nothing like what I'm doing now. But I wasn't comfortable there. I was a square peg in a round hole. No one understood me. They all thought I was, a bit of an airhead, I guess. And I think my personality sometimes belies my intelligence. It kind of betrays me because I'm like chatty and silly. And so people assume that I'm not as smart as I am. But when I was working there, I'm naturally really disorganized. And so I had to buy a book. When I moved in with my husband, who is type A, like really, really clean and tidy sort of person by nature, I moved into his house and I just messed it up. And so I thought, well, he's going to ask me to leave, and I'd rather him ask me to marry him. And so I'm like, what I want to do is like just pick up my socks a bit, literally. And so I bought a book, and that book was by Julie Morgenstern, who I later met and then cried all over because I was like meeting my idol, and it was very unprofessional of me. But this book, she started off really disorganized, and then she taught herself, and then she started like teaching other people how to be organized. I'm like, what is this profession? Like, this is really cool. I've never heard of this before. And so I just decided that's what I wanted to do. And like, I had people saying to me, you want to organize other people? Right. Okay. And my husband was like, okay. And I did it, and I organized the house and I organized my space, and I'm still messy, but everything has a home, and I'm like, everything is in a controlled, curated volume. So I've got quite really strong control over my stuff, even though it's often laying around, it's under control. And so I did all of that, and then I decided to start the business, and I said to my husband, I think I want to do this as business. And he's like, all right. So he said, write me up a business plan. And so the CEO telling me this, of course, that's the first thing he thought of. And so I did a business plan, and he looked at it, and he did a bit of a feasibility study, and he went, all right, let's go. And so I did. I left my job and I started doing this as a business. And then in 2011, I think he left his job and joined the business as well. So at first I was just doing like organising one-on-one, part-time. I had little kids, you know, I had like a preschooler and one, I don't know, no, they weren't even that old, I don't think. And so they were little kids. And so I had to work really part-time, and I was doing that for ages. And then he came on board, and he helped me then work full-time because he did all of the caring. And then he got bored with that and started a downsizing service. So we've evolved into downsizing. While he was evolving into downsizing, I was evolving into hoarding and mental illness and chronic disorganisation and complex needs. So that's where we're quite divergent now from the original organising business. And I work with people with disabilities, with mental illness, with complex needs, and or just not necessarily really complex needs, but just a strong difficulty or a strong attachment to belongings that makes it not as easy for everybody else to get organised. So yeah, that's where we've evolved. And so I'm now specialising in that area, and he's specialising in estates and downsizing.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And it's doing really well. Then there's still the downsizing and estates. I can imagine that would be.
He's flat out all the time.
Yeah. Is there many other services like that in Adelaide?
Not that do the full service. So there are packing businesses, and there's removalists, and there's professional organisers, and there's people who find you retirement villages, and there's all that. And there are a couple of professional organisers that are doing the downsizing, but Mick just does the whole kit and caboodle. So he'll project manage the entire thing. And so as far as the skill level and experience goes, I think, you know, he's still the king in Adelaide.
Yeah. And I love, actually, I'll put a link to the episodes that you shared on moving, because you did share lots of tips from Mick's side of the business that you've experienced, which I found really useful, because I happened to have a client that wanted to move, and I was like, I'm not really a specialist in this, but I'm definitely happy. Like, as I'd been working with them for a year, I was like, I'm definitely happy. So it was definitely really useful, those 4 episodes that you did on in Be Uncluttered, but I'll definitely share a link to it. So what do you love about what do you love about the business then? All your clients, what is it that?
My clients are so nice and fun and interesting. You know, they're just so interesting. I just my favorite thing is meeting new people, and unfortunately talking their head off. And I did get a client recently who can't cope with noise and too much stimulation. And so I was like, okay, Rebecca, dampen it down. And so I was like, try not to chat too much. And she said to me at the end, she said, I said, how are you feeling? How's your anxiety levels? Because I like often really anxious when I arrive. And she said, it's good. She said, you're really calm. I'm like, yes, I did it. I managed to adjust myself to suit that. So like, you know, so yeah, they're just all so different, and they're just lovely people. Like, I just meet the nicest people, have the loveliest chats. And, you know, I stayed an extra half an hour back, you know, the other day, just chatting with this lady. We're just rabbiting onto each other, and she's made me a cuppa, and it was the end of the day, and I'm like, I want to have another appointment, you know. And she said, have a cuppa with me, and I'm like, okay. And I was I've been in a retirement village all week, sort of working with a few different clients, and she was one of them. So it was lovely. It's just nice to meet different people all the time, and the stuff I learned from this is incredible. Like, I've just learned so much about disabilities and mental illness and neurodivergence. You know, a new autistic client this week, and I had, you know, some really good discussions about the way autism can affect your level of organisation and your attachment and all those kinds of things. It's just really interesting.
Do you feel that you have like a niche particular, you know, area? I mean, you did mention hoarding, but is it a type of disability that you do attract more of?
No, well, yes, probably autism. Probably autism. It's probably one of the most common ones that I work with. But then I also have, you know, several clients with brain injuries who, you know, can have difficulty with, say, for example, out of sight means out of mind for them, literally, you know, not just they'll forget it's there. They don't know it's there unless they can see it. So that becomes an organizational challenge immediately. And then there's physical disabilities as well. So, again, a couple of my brain injury clients have only use of, one side of their body or something like that. So then you've got to take that into account. So, but I think I've got lots of clients with autism, or lots of clients with kids with autism.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. But yeah, I have quite a range. There's also bipolar, borderline personality disorder, hoarding disorder, anxiety and depression. So, and then aging. Even without any dementia, aging is a, particular challenge. The clients that I, had yesterday, we have had to adjust, we basically are writing off all storage, above her shoulders because she can't reach that high.
Yes.
So there's all that as well. So it's just anytime there's more of a complex need, that's kind of where I find myself.
Yeah. And what about ADHD? Do you find that too is underlying in a lot of
it's often a comorbidity with autism.
Yes.
So I'll often find that there. But there's I've definitely had lots of ADHD clients as well, because that executive dysfunction, it really means that, what somebody else might go find easy.
Yes.
Just do it. All you have to do is put the stamp on the letter and post it. Just do it. But for someone with executive dysfunction, it's like, oh no, that's the impossible thing. I can't do it. When we have to find ways to get those kinds of things either done or not needed to be done in the first place. So that's a strategy.
Do you have a story around, I've got a few stories over the past 2 years of things that you do for people that other people are just like, what? One of them was the other day, we were organizing wigs to sell the wigs, because that's so many steps to sell things. And then she was like, have you got any? And she then asked, have you had any? And I went, well, yeah, I found hair, lots of hair, big, long cuts off bits of hair. And people are like, I don't know what to do with it. I'm like, oh, that's right. I know, you post it to this place and they make it into wigs. And I've got the address saved on my, they're like, oh, really? Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah. And then you get a certificate that I can pass on to them. So do you have any of those, a story that stands out for you of things?
Probably a little bit different to yours, but I still remember, I have a client that I've now been seeing for 12, 13 years. She was still one of my first clients, and she's now a dear friend, and she still gets me in when there's life transitions. At the moment, she's got lots of problems with elderly parents, lots of complex needs around her elderly parents. And but I remember that one of the first times I was at her place and we were talking about things, and there was her toddler at the time, who's now 19, again, amazing, not a toddler, but he was young, and we had a little craft table, and I said I said to her something like, I just sort of sat down in front of her and I said, well, we can do this. And I started just sort of pulling things out one at a time and looking at it one at a time and then making a decision about it. And she's gone, George, come and watch this. And I'm like, not that unusual, is it? And she said she's doing things one at a time, and then she's making a decision before she moves on to the next one. And I was like, just sometimes there are some things that we take for granted that make sense to us that other people are like, this is life-changing.
Yes.
You've just changed my life. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it's just sometimes it's those little things that, and when she said that, I was like, wow, I didn't think that this was something that would be, unusual. And obviously I'm a lot more experienced now. So there are things that I say, that people go, oh, I've never thought of it that way, or oh, that was really helpful, or that thing you said to me last week, I've been saying it over and over and over again to myself, and it's really helping. So it's sort of those little different ways of looking at things, I think, that are the most profound changes to other people, that seem really obvious to me, and I've gotten much more aware of that. So I never assume knowledge now.
Yes.
Or I never assume but I used to, it's just something that, and again, I was younger, and, when you're younger, you make these assumptions due to a lack of life experience, I suppose. And, now it's like, you make those assumptions, and they, it really puts you into a box, and it means that it's really difficult to then help people if you're just assuming what they already know. So if you assume nothing, and then they might go, oh yeah, I've done that before, and you're like, oh cool, so you do know that. But other times you're like, really?
Yes.
And so
Oh,
you're
no.
like, yes, that's useful for them then. So yeah.
I love that when I suggest, what about if we move this here, or we did this, or what about this? And they're just like, oh my God, you're so amazing at this. And I'm like, oh, really? I just thought that would be normal. Like,
It just
yes,
popped in my head.
yeah, no, that's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that when you see those moments. And like you said, I love my favorite bit is when kids are involved with me. So, when the parent says, oh, the kids they're still at home, remote learning at the moment, or they've got a curriculum done. Oh, awesome. I love that, because there's always a job, and it's that osmosis that they learn through watching what you're doing, isn't it? And
yeah. And kids need to be a part of the process. They
oh,
can't
definitely
end up growing up with this sort of house fairy kind of mentality of not knowing the process of how a house is maintained, and how boundaries are set, and all of those kinds of things, and how to let go of things and make their own decisions about their stuff and all of that. So yeah, it's working with kids is really great. And there's some kids, depending on their neurodivergent status or their emotional status or whatever it is, some kids well, they're all different, so there's different challenges. And I was with a client the other day, and because it's school holidays, her son was home, and he wants to keep everything, and she sort of, all of our sessions had been with him at school, and so we just talked about him, but I'd never worked with him at that point. But it was school holidays, and she sort of, I was early, and they arrived home and came into the house, so we all sort of came in together, and so we were just sort of all chatting. And she just, I don't know how it happened, but it just happened that he got involved in a decision about something. We were going to work on something else, but she brought up one of his things, so he got involved. Anyway, for about 15 minutes or so, he and I were like vibing. So he was letting go of stuff, and he was chatting away to me, and he was talking about his own interests, and he has autism. And so one of the things he does a lot is talk about his own interests a lot. And it's one of the things that she wants him to work on, because he doesn't listen to anyone else about their interests. But it was great because he was so focused on his interests. I could slip in what do you want to do with this? And he was engaged with me. So he was like already pre-engaged on a different level, but he was then I would be able to get him to engage on my level, and he would jump back to his again. And so it was really good. And we went for a while like that, and then he disappeared. And then we tried again, and he goes, just bring me things to make decisions about. And I'm like, and so after about, I think it was about half an hour, I came into her, I said, we've lost him. And she said, we did well for a while. And we did. We cleared several cubes of stuff in his bookcase. But yeah, we did lose him after a while. He just had enough. But it was, it's like working with them, it's always different depending on the kid. And some kids will engage for 4 hours, and others will engage for 5 minutes, and you take what you can in that 5 minutes, and you do what you can with that time. But it's amazing how they learn quite well from even just that small amount of time.
Definitely. And I love you've got an episode which I share with lots of clients, the one with your son. I love it.
With
when
Ethan,
with Ethan and his, because I've shared it with clients, and they've used it with their children, so their children can listen and relate to another person. So I absolutely love that episode. It's one of my favorite. I don't know if it's one of your top downloads at all, it is.
Yeah, I actually haven't checked the stats. It's not one of the top downloaded ones. People prefer the practical ones, like where to put stuff. They're always a really high downloaded ones. But it's my favorite one as well. And obviously because he's my son and it's fun to do something with him.
Yeah.
But and you've listened to it, so but just the transition from this kid who couldn't let go of anything and who lived in a mess. I mean, he's still, if I opened his room now, he's 17, there was still stuff all over the floor. But the thing is, he's minimalized down to the point where it only takes him a few minutes to tidy up. When he can, is deigned to be bothered, it will only take him a few minutes. And so that transition from, that little emotionally attached kid to this minimalist almost adult is quite interesting. And then another thing, and I was talking to a client yesterday about this who's got really young kids, and I said, it's time to get in now, get in early on managing the volume of belongings and managing their expectations around belongings and acquisitions and all that stuff. It's really good to start early. And I said to her that one of the things that I kind of worried about, which you always do when you're a parent, you wonder if your strategies are actually doing well by them or whatever. And I said to her, look, my kids got a Wii in 2009, and that's the only gaming console they've ever had, and they've only ever had 3 or 4 games. they still play it unironically. Like I even said to Ethan, you play it ironically, don't you? And he went, no, we actually enjoy playing it. Oh, okay. So they still play this week. They've never asked for another gaming console. They might have when they were little said, could we get PlayStation? We've said, no, you've got a gaming console, and they've gone, okay. But they've never complained. And I have asked them both now as, you know, one adult and one almost adult, you know, do you feel like you missed out on your childhood because of the boundaries we placed around acquisitions and belongings and all that? And they both said, no, we're really grateful. We know how to wait for things. We know how to work hard for things. We're not addicted to games. We're, you know, and they're like, and we're not spoiled. And they sort of then will cite examples from their circles and people they know of how they're glad they're not like that. And so I sort of said to her, you know, because she said it's not fair for kids to not get toys during the year. And I went, really? Like, let's challenge that assumption, shall we? And then I told her about my kids who said, no, they don't feel like they ever missed out. And so, yeah, that's something I like to reassure clients of, is that
that's
actually they didn't miss out, you know. And that one of my kids' peers did once call us poor.
Oh, yes.
Which I thought is a pretty mean insult, because what's wrong with being poor? But obviously they thought, and Ethan said, he said I was poor. And I said, oh, what do you think about that? And he said, no, I don't think we're poor. I just think we save our money. Like, we save it instead of spend it. And it makes us look poor because we haven't got the greatest, newest PlayStation, or they don't get brand new iPhones as soon as they come out, and all that kind of stuff, like because we live in an affluent suburb. So a lot of friends, and, you know, they all get like stuff given to them, and they all holiday, you know, wherever. And so, you know, he, like, my kid knew logically that we weren't poorer than this other child, but it was an interesting way to be insulted, and it was an interesting assumption that this other child make, is because we don't spend lots of money that we have none. It's like, no, actually we actually have probably plenty of money because we don't spend it on all this stuff. It's like, it's really interesting. So
we've had that same story about but not to do with you know, physical things, but food, because my kids don't take packets to school. And so my daughter was told, it was a couple of years ago, that she must be poor if her mum can't afford to buy packets to put in her lunchbox, because she just has homemade things in her bento box. And I was like, and she said it to me, oh yeah, everyone keeps saying that we're really poor. I'm like, we're not really poor. Why do you say that? She said, because you can't afford to buy packets. And I was like, I buy things from the health food shop to put in your lunchbox to make you things.
Twice as much.
Cost more. We're not poor at all. And so she'd made that assumption. So again, it's that story, trying to break it down. And if we hadn't even had that conversation, she'd still be walking around thinking we're possibly poor because we don't take packets in our lunchboxes.
It's interesting. And it is like this whole idea of having things, and what it means as part of your identity. Like it does form an identity thing. And I think, you know, my kids sort of grew up not feeling poor, but feeling goodness, what's the word for it? Feeling like, no, I lost my train of thought, but more gratitude for not being like that, and more aware of the differences in values over differences in belongings. And so, like, my kids are quite aware of the values people have, and less aware of what they own, and you know, and base their judgment of people more on their behavior and their values than on what they own, which, you know, I think it'd be good if everyone did that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, what a beautiful thing that you've passed on to your children, both children, well, adults now.
Almost adults.
I know, that's crazy. I remember when they were really little.
I know. My baby just turned 17. It's like, oh, it's amazing.
So what about, I'd love for you to share and focus on intentional wardrobes, because there again, the episodes that I really enjoyed, and I think that's one of those things that I see a lot with clients, is a lot of purchasing, just especially, you know, over the past 2 years, during lockdown, just to feel good. You know, that instant gratification. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's no surprise that we're always buying things, because we're always told that we'll be happier if we have these things. And advertise exactly how advertising works. You know, all the advertising is different, but especially for things like beauty products and clothing and cars and those kinds of things, it's all about you will be happier if you have this. If you buy this 4-wheel drive, your family will be happily camping with no one fighting and throwing things at each other, by the side of an idyllic river. And if you buy this makeup and if you look younger, then you'll be happier because you look younger. Okay. And clothing, you'll be happier if you look this way because you'll look better than everyone else. It's like, okay, so that we've been told, and all of us are fallible to this. We're all, going to be affected by this, but we're all told life will be better if we buy this, and it becomes something that's ingrained in us. And so, we buy things because we think that they're going to make our life better in some way. And it won't be necessarily a big dramatic better, like this is going to all of a sudden make you a better friend. But it's these little bits of better. You're going to have something that makes you look thinner or bigger bummed, or it's going to make you look taller, or it's going to make you look like you have money and therefore you must be important. That sort of things kind of make us do that, and we are all susceptible to it. And but fashion is like one of the worst, and it really grates on me, as you would be aware from listening to me rant about it. It's one of those, and I'm still like, I still buy clothes. Like I'm not saying that people shouldn't buy clothes or anything like that, but I think that we could really shake things up as consumers and make the fashion industry do better, and do better by the environment, and do better by garment workers, and do better by their consumers, because we're buying into all of it. They're just telling us buy this and we're buying it.
Yeah,
we're not thinking about this, we're not working together to make sure that it gets changed. There was a ridiculous stat that I read recently about UK youths or young people in the UK, like 18 to 25, who on average wear an item twice before it's discarded.
wow.
Yeah, and that's the average. And like, was something that's probably incorrect, so do not quote me on any statistics. My memory is atrocious, but it was a stat that I read and I went, oh my God, that is absurd. So it was pretty bad. And this high rotation, there's an online retailer, UK-based online retailer, which I'm not going to give them any airtime by saying who they are, who will sell things like at certain times of the year, dresses for 30 cents, 30 pence. And so people buy like, oh, I just bought 30 dresses, and I got it for a bargain. It's like, why? Why did you buy 30 dresses? So that you can just throw them in the bin after one wear. And, and if something's being sold for 30 cents, where in the supply chain is that? How
can you do that?
How can you afford
it? Yeah.
And they can afford it by underpaying garment workers, and by using cheap materials, and by not putting in healthy environmental practices and all this kind of stuff, and just doing everything on the cheap. And it's like, when someone buys a bargain, they think they're buying a bargain, but when you think about who actually pays the true cost of that, it's somebody disadvantaged down the line. It's someone who now has to walk for 5 kilometers to get fresh water every day because their local water is polluted by a manufacturer who's nearby. It's those kinds of people that are disadvantaged when you get your bargain, your 30-cent dress. So as you can tell, I get quite riled up about it. And I still buy stuff, but I think that there are ways that we can be really intentional about how we set our wardrobe up so that we are not feeding the monster quite so much.
Yeah. So what tips have you got around the intentional shopping then?
So there's quite a bit of a process to ending up with an intentional wardrobe, and it's a long, thick, sort of took me about 5 years to get to it through a process of, curating and culling and everything. But, you need to sort of know your style and choose a certain style that you're going to stick to. So, you might decide that you don't do boho, so, okay, boho's not in my style. So then, you're not going to be buying those things on little whims because they're 30 cents because, well, that's not my style. I'm not going to buy that. So that cuts out a certain, you're not going to buy, you might not buy goth. You might not buy feminine things. You might not buy masculine things. You can have this idea in your mind of what your style is. And then color palettes. I reduced my color palette down significantly as well. So I know what colors suit me, and then I halved that again, and I went with this are the colors that I buy and that I wear. And so when I walk into a store and they're all burgundies and deep greens, I'm like, oh I'm walking out of here. They don't have
Yes.
any colors that I wear, so I'm leaving. And so, you know, that is another way to reduce the amount of stuff that comes in.
And did you have a particular person that you used to do that, or did you use a professional to do yours?
Yeah, I had a professional stylist, and I don't advertise her because I wasn't happy with the whole process. She dressed me, and she dresses her customers like herself. And that was, you know, when I was sort of getting into it, I didn't realize that, but now I realize that that's the way that she operates. So I don't share that, but I do advocate getting stylists though, because it is really helpful to know if you've worked out yourself what colors suit you, or you don't care what suits you and you just want to buy the things you love. That's also amazing as well, if you know what to buy. Because I always say it doesn't matter if it suits you, if you love it, wear it. Like, who cares if it gives you dark shadows under your eyes? Dark shadows under your eyes aren't the worst ever thing that's going to happen to you. If you love purple, wear purple, you know, and wear your purple and it matches your dark shadows under your eyes. Who cares? But if you do care about, you know, doing things like making yourself look a little bit brighter or whatever, then you can get them professionally chosen for you, or, you know, get you told what your colors are. So I do advocate for that, because it can narrow down your focus significantly. And when you are shopping, you are much more selective, and being selective is a good thing.
I did that color guru just to get my colors. I did it at the start of the year when I heard someone else talking about it, and it's been amazing, because I just go into the shop, I have my colors there, I zone in and go, yep, they've got those. No, they don't. I'm walking out. And so, because otherwise I had got to the habit of just doing black, grey and white as the way of going, well, I know those will safe. They're safe. I was then just safe shopping. And then that's the thing. Now when I got them, it's funny, when I looked at it, I'm like, when I used to wear that dress in that yellow and that dress in that color, people would say, oh, that's such a beautiful dress, but it actually wasn't the dress, it's the color that they were commenting on.
It was that whole and all the whole package as well. It's just the style of it as well. That's the one thing that I did learn from the stylist I used was, and she has a background in interior design, and this is where her skill is mixing colors. And so one of the things that I found really hard to do was mix colors. I would wear colors with black because I didn't know how to put a color with a color. And so it would freak me out then, you know. So buying a green skirt would have been like, I can't buy a green skirt because what would I wear with it? Like I wouldn't know what I'd have to wear a black top with it, and then
or a white top.
Or a white top. And it's like, and so now, you know, I'm like, okay, I've got a green top that I know that pale pink works well with that green. Apricot works really well with that green. Red works really well with that green. And so there's other colors. Like, colors do love colors, and there are colors that are besties, and then there are colors that are not so great. And you can do, you know, there's little tricks to it, you know, like you know, green and red, sort of people are like, oh no, green and red don't go together. But if you put one end of the scale, so if you turn your green into mint, so you're sort of making it lighter, and then you turn your red into burgundy and mint are best friends. Like, you put them together and it's like, wow. And so, you know, when you know those tricks, you can actually, so I learned a lot from her about how to mix my colors. It was the styling side of things I wasn't happy with, but colors, I learned a lot. And the color guru, we had her on our podcast, and
you did too.
And she was, she's really good. And I follow her on Instagram, and I do see just, you know, how well getting your colors done can really change. So so I limited my palette. The other thing that I encourage people to do is to buy quality.
Definitely.
And pay full price. Now, this is something that people find really hard to adjust to, is paying full price. And I was chatting to actually my elderly, she's 92, my client yesterday, and we were talking about clothes, and I complimented on her dress. And I can't remember how it came up, but basically she said, you know, what I've learned in 92 years, you know, is to save up and buy expensive, good quality clothes. And you know, and I said, like, instead of buying 7 pairs of $20 jeans, buy 1 pair of $200 jeans. You know, and that, you know, and she's like, absolutely, you know. And that's one of the things that she learned, you know, in her years. And she, you know, she said, if I could impart that to anyone, it would be buy quality clothes, buy fewer if you can't afford lots of them. She was quite wealthy, so she had plenty, but she said, you know, she wasn't always wealthy either, and so she learned how to save up for things and just have one of something. And so I always encourage my clients to think about buying things based on the quality of their workmanship and their longevity, because the way to reduce clothing waste is to wear your clothes for as long as possible, and ignore fashion. Wear something that suits you, that you love, until it dies. And even then, when it dies, repair it until it dies again, and try and keep going. And so we're, buying things that are high quality, and also the good thing about buying more high quality fabrics often is that those fabrics and those makes are more environmentally conscious as well, because they have less microplastics in them and stuff like that. So that's where I've moved to now. I originally was on the buying quality and buying sort of ethically manufactured from that perspective, but I was still buying polyesters and those kinds of things. And so now I'm moving into, okay, now I've got that sort of habit sorted, and now I want to move into the natural fabrics as well, which makes it much harder, and things take longer to find. You have to do more research to find the clothes that you want, but you do end up obviously buying less because it's much more work to find, knits. Like Christy and I went shopping. Narelle and I share a bestie. Christy and I went shopping, and we looked for a whole day. I looked for knits, couldn't find the knit that I wanted. Had to have certain, I had this criteria, and we looked in a billion places. And we walked out without me buying one knit. And then another day I was shopping with my mother-in-law, and I'd been looking for new knits because my 8-year-old ones were starting to fall apart. And I now was on I need natural fabrics, but because I'm allergic to wool, it needs to be this certain blend so that I can actually wear it without coming out in a rash. And I've walked into the store, and they had beautiful woolen and cashmere knits on sale, and I was like, okay. So I walked out with 2 of them, because I'm like, it was funny though that I've spent an entire day walking into a billion different stores, and then I spent this one time wandering into one store, and it's got exactly what I wanted. So you're doing the research and paying full price. So I had a client who was addicted to clothes shopping and addicted to swapping online and buying cheap things from eBay. So she would buy clothes and really like bargain sort of hunt. She would never pay, much for anything at all. Anyway, she decided to take me shopping because she said I needed to provide that voice of reason, I guess, while she was shopping, because she needed new clothes. And we'd been working together for a while. So she was in that mindset of, I'm trying to do better here. And so we went shopping, and I told her that I found a pair of pants for her. First of all, we had to make a list. So we made the list, because you can't shop clothes without a list, because then you just buy anything. So we had a list, and I said to her, she's not allowed to buy anything that's not on that list. And immediately she hated me. But we went into the shop. And so she came back with some work pants, and there were a few different types of work pants, but I found a pair, and I said, try these on. And she said, no, they're $140. I'm not paying $140 for a pair of black pants. And I said, try the pants on. And so she marched in there and she tried the pants on. Now she spent about half an hour trying different sizes on, trying other clothes on with them, shoes on with them, because she was not going to buy a $140 pair of pants unless they were absolutely perfect. Yeah. And she bought them. And then a few weeks later, and she said, I've never done this before. And, she was just shocked at she spending all this money, because normally she'd buy a $25 pair of black pants. They were just like work pants, and which, you can get them quite cheap. And so she rang me a few weeks later, and she said, I'm so glad you made me buy those pants. I've worn them every day. I love them. I'm going to buy another pair. They fit perfectly. Yeah. I get complimented at all them. And what would happen normally is that she would buy the $25 pair because they were cheap, but there'd be something that she's compromising on. So they'd be set a bit too low. So she'd get a muffin top, or she'd have to keep pulling her pants up, or, they would, lump somewhere, or they would be a little bit too long, or whatever. Yeah. And because she was spending so much money, she was very fastidious about them meeting all of her needs. Yeah. So she ended up buying a pair of pants that was perfect for her, was going to get a really high amount of wear for a long time. So her per wear cost of that item was really low compared to the cheaper items that she'd bought. And she said, thank you, because without you, I would have bought a cheaper pair, and I would be already replacing them by now. And I would end up with, 27 pairs of black pants in my wardrobe. Yeah. So, and we do the same with shoes. I mean, what woman has not bought a pair of shoes that is half a size too small because they were 60% off and cute? I mean, we've all done it. We've all done it. You haven't?
I hate shoes, no. So I'm very much, they have to be comfortable. And if they're not,
even in your 20s, Because in
Oh
your
no,
20s,
I
I
probably
was an
did
idiot in my
then.
20s.
Yeah. I probably
Yeah,
would have then. I can't remember, but now
yeah.
no, they're very much. There's
Yeah.
just a few pairs that people would be horrified to see my shoes. There's like
But
maybe 6 pairs.
when you're still learning
Yes,
about,
yes.
and this is the thing, like in my 20s, I absolutely did that. I absolutely would squish myself into a pair of shoes because they were cheap and I liked them. And, but once we start paying full price for things, we get
Yes.
very discerning, and we will not walk out of a store. I mean, unless we're, Kim Kardashian or something, but we will not walk out of a store spending $250 on a pair of shoes unless they are absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And so that makes us then buy shoes that are going to get a really long life with us because we love them and they fit us perfectly and they go with several of our outfits and all those kinds of things. So this is where I advocate for paying full price, because it makes you really discerning, and you will walk out of a store without any shoes if they're not right, and so
definitely.
it reduces the amount of the volume that you've got and the amount of waste. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. And a lot of people do say, look, that's really classist, maybe, I don't know, like that there are people who cannot afford to spend $140 on a pair of pants or $300 on a pair of shoes, and absolutely there definitely are. But I have to say that, and there are obviously going to be exceptions, but I have to say that I do have a lot of clients on low income, and I do see them buy large volumes of low cost items, and that if they switched that to be a medium volume of a medium cost item, they would be spending exactly the same amount of money, but they would get things that would last them, and then they will have less things in their wardrobe and less clutter. So it definitely can be done, and I do understand that money is definitely an issue for people, and I'm speaking from a position of privilege. That said, I still blanch at the idea of spending too much on things. Like I'm budget conscious, of course. I'm not wealthy, but I do know that if people have that mindset of I'm going to spend the most that I can afford on something and get the best quality I can within my budget, you will end up still getting the benefits of the same benefits that I'm talking about, where you have less stuff and you have high quality things that fit you better, that you like, that last longer. And the longer they last, the better it all is for the environment, the less you have to replace it. By us feeding these fast fashion machines, by buying things, they're just going to keep doing it. We have to say no, and I have bought things from, these fast fashion places, but, I've got, like I was talking about, these knits that are falling apart. I actually still have knits from, I think one is 9 years old, from Dottie. And so it was a fast fashion brand. It is like a relatively cheap fabric. It's a cotton poly blend, but I have worn that for like 9 years or more, and and it's got a couple of holes in them, but I still wear them. And this is the thing, I think we don't have to boycott the brands entirely, although there are some that I would encourage you to boycott, but we don't have to boycott the brands entirely, but we can use them in your way, instead of the way they want you to use. Instead of them saying buy a new knit every 2 months, you can go, no, I'm going to buy a new knit every 7 years, thank you very much, and I'm happy to buy it from you, but I'm not buying this many of them. And so we can still do that as well, and we can still say, I'm going to buy things that last. I'm going to stick with my style. I'm not going to follow fashion. I'm going to, and this is the thing with, with fashion, there are some things that come into fashion and I go, I'm never buying that. Like, I don't care if it's trendy. And and this is another thing that comes with age, and probably people in their 20s are like, what are you talking about? How do you know what your style is? But you get to it when you get older. And you get to the point where you're like, oh, there's no way. Like, can you imagine if like low-rise jeans came back in? Like, no way would I go there. But then there's other things that are part of my style that aren't in fashion. That's the most frustrating thing, is the fact that when you want something that's a particular style, but it's not in fashion, you can't get it. And I had this thing with waistcoats. Like, for the last 5 years, I've been wanting to do the Rachel and wear like jeans and a white t-shirt with a waistcoat. And it's not trendy in fashion at all, but I'm like, it suits me, so I want to wear it. Do you think I could find a waistcoat anywhere? I finally found a vintage one.
I was going to say
in a secondhand market. I looked at all the op shop ones, they're ugly. They were like those shiny, satiny ones. But I found one that was like, I think it's from the 70s. And so it's matte. it's like a matte fabric, like a wool.
Yeah.
It's wool basically. And I know it's wool because I could see that holes in it where things have eaten it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit moth eaten, but it's got that not shiny, glossy sort of gross look about it. So yes, and that's the one frustrating thing. But then once you get something that's your style, it doesn't matter whether it's in or out of fashion. You can just keep wearing it because, you know, people will say, you know, wow, that really suits you. You know, because, you know, and waistcoats are something that really suit me, and whether they're in fashion or not, when I wear them, you know, people will say something like, oh, this looks good. Mick said to me the first time I put it on, he said, you look like a waitress, but it looks really good. And like,
love their honesty.
I could. Well, I was wearing it with white shirt and black pants, so I definitely did look like a waitress. But I looked good, you know, and so I looked like a waitress who looked good.
Yes.
So it didn't really bother me. But so this thing of finding your style and knowing what suits you, and knowing, you know, to avoid certain things, you know, I avoided the bubble skirt trend that came in because that didn't suit me. I don't know when that was. That was what, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
but I avoided that. Like that wasn't. I was like, I'm not going there. I do not do. You know, I'll stick with my pencil skirts. Thanks very much.
Yes.
But that's the thing, you know, you find your style and you stick with it, and you can have a limited wardrobe and a limited palette and still have so much fun with it because everything suits you. And, you know, you have the problem of opening your wardrobe and not knowing what to wear, not because you don't like any of it, but because you love it all so much you can't pick which of your favorites you want to wear that day. And there's a great joy in that, and a great joy in knowing everything that you own. You know, my clients are quite marvel sometimes that I can list off every pair of underpants that I own and every knit that I have and every pair of jeans that I have and every shirt. I can list them all, and I know where they are, you know, and most of the time, to a certain degree, just looking at my chair in my bedroom that's got 2 knits on that when they should my chair should be in the wardrobe, but you know, I know them all, and you know your whole wardrobe, so you can get dressed in your head in the shower, and that saves time because you know everything you own, and you probably know where it is, and you'll know whether it's clean or dirty. That's the only thing sometimes I don't know, is that clean or not, but you can get yourself dressed in the shower, and so by the time you come to choose your clothes, it's a 30-second activity. And so all these benefits of just honing in on longevity and style and simplicity, you know, makes such a difference. And then there's all the environmental benefits of you not plowing through clothes, you know, hundreds a year.
And time, like I hate shopping, so and not being able to go into stores at the moment, you know, it's like, well, when am I going to do this? So I think that's one thing I found, you know, I don't shop on sales. It's like I'm going because I need to replace an item because it's worn out and change. So my husband was very much like that. He'd just go shopping when he needed it, never when a sale. And I'd be like, oh, why don't you wait? There's probably a sale in a couple of weeks. He's like, yeah, but I need it now, and I want what's going to suit me. So he definitely helped me.
He's very intentional about that. Yeah,
completely. And I think men are, aren't they? A lot of them.
And Nick's the same. And he's sort of not. I mean, there are definitely guys that are more into fashion and they sort of have a higher turnover of clothes. But Mick wears the same things he's been wearing for the last 20 years sometimes. And so, and probably, and not literally some of the same things. And so otherwise it's just the same style. But I think it's that intentionality that's really important. And this, you know, when I say pay full price, I mean that you intend to pay full price. Like when I walked into this store and they had these knits they were on sale, so I got quite a good bargain, but I didn't buy them because they were on sale. I bought them because I needed knits, and I'd been wanting them in that blend, in a you know, a knit that was wool blend that wasn't going to bring me out in a rash, and they ticked the boxes. So I ended up, you know, buying 2 of them, and you know, to get wool cashmere blends for $100 is like,
that's amazing.
A little bit of bargain. So I still got my high. So you can still, you know, if you intend to pay full price for something, but you get yourself a bargain at the same time, but the whole other process was intentional, then that's a bonus. You know? So if he did go, to buy something and they had a sale and he didn't know about, he'd be like, woohoo, and he saved money on this purchase that he would have made anyway. And that's the key. Would you pay full price for it? Is a really good question to ask yourself, because if you wouldn't, that means you're only buying it for the bargain. You're not buying it for the item itself.
Yeah. And I mean, you'll look at that for that brand again and go back to that shop again now that if you enjoy the fabric that it's made from as well. I think that's the thing, isn't it? But yeah, it makes me laugh. Like my kids will see photos of Sean and I like years ago when they were little, and I'm like, you're still wearing that same top, Mum. Dad, you're wearing that hoodie still. It's like, yep. Because we buy it now because we know it's going to last, because we are, we're not going to be going shopping as often as we did back then. And also just having a son who hates shopping. It does limit going shopping. And, the rest of us, the other three of us, like to go, and we'll go together when my son's out doing his own thing. Whereas him, I take a photo of it. I know exactly what I have to get him, take a photo of it, I send it to him, or I'll video call him and say, what do you think? Do you like that color as well? I know the style and I know what it has to feel like. So he's very easy to shop for.
Yeah. The more specific someone is, the easier they are to shop with, because you can just write something off immediately. But yeah, I said, my daughter loves op shopping, and I've got a love-hate relationship with op shopping. One, I love it for its environmental and like its sustainability, because you're reusing something that would normally have gone to landfill, and you're not purchasing something and using all of those resources. So that's awesome. I love that. However, the way op shops are set up is basically for bargain hunting. And so you tend to do overbuy when you go into an op shop, and I do it as well. So I have to steer clear of them, because I buy things like, oh, this is nice, and it's only $3, and then I come home and I can't be bothered trying it on because I'm lazy. So I come home and I try it on, I'm like, oh, I really misjudged the size of that. I'll redonate that. So you get into a trap of that bargain hunting kind of impulse purchasing, and that's really dangerous for volumes of belongings. So I've got kind of a love hack, but Zoe loves op shopping, so she buys pretty much only secondhand clothes now. And Ethan doesn't buy much at all. He's a minimalist, and so he's really picky, and he's actually asked me to take him shopping today because he saw a shirt with his mate when he was shopping last week, and it was expensive, but he needs like a nice shirt. And I said to him that he could buy it, but he thought I was saying he could buy it out of his own money, but I was telling him we would pay for it. So he didn't buy it. So now he wants to go and show me again today, and maybe buy it. So we're going to have a look at that.
I don't know if you find it. I've got a few clients who like either work in op shops or, volunteer, and they're the worst because they have so many bargains. They have amazing stuff, amazing kids resources, amazing wardrobe, but just too much because it's so cheap.
Exactly. It just affects the volume more than anything. It is. And I think there you can have control of it, and one of the things I do is, if I do fall into the trap, I go into an op shop and I get a bit carried away, and this is again why I say to Zoe, I'm not going op shopping with you because I get carried away, and I come home with an armload of cheap stuff that I sort of try it all on, and I just redonate immediately anything that I've accidentally and I write that off, and then I put that in my bank of, Rebecca, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't go up shopping again, because you bought $20 worth of stuff that you've immediately redonated. But the whole leaving the house thing is important, because when you do that impulse shopping frequently and with high volumes, the clutter builds up really quickly, and then if you've got a cluttered wardrobe, and this is the irony of it, is that the fuller the wardrobe, the less you feel you have to wear. And so that's a real trap that it's helpful to get out of or try and avoid. The less clothes you have, the more you can enjoy them, to a certain point, obviously.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Beck, for all of your tips, especially around that intentional wardrobe. I think that'll be really useful for people who have maybe not even thought about it. That was, I think, when I listened to yours, I had some ideas, but I think you just planted even more, which was fantastic. So thank you for sharing those tips and for your time. And and could you share then, how can people find you?
Oh, yes. So my website is www.rebeccamezzino.com.au. That's MEZZINO. And Be Uncluttered is the name of our podcast, and that's at www.beuncluttered.com.au. And Mick's downsizing is at clearspace.net.au.
And all of those are pretty much the same for your social media, but I will share links for those as well.
And you can get to the social media via the websites as well.
Yeah,
so,
beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Beck, for your time and all your tips. It was great to catch up.
No worries.